your name and give us your address.
Kevin Horstman, 19 Greenfield Road, Horstman. Not much I do to top of what Garrett just said, but I do agree with everything that every Manalapan resident came up here and stated about this change the amendment of the master plan. And against everything for the people who came up here that are for it as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Swear or sign the testimony about to give this word the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, if you just state and spell your name for us and give us the address.
David Finkelstein, 26 Smaller Lane, Manalapan, New Jersey.
Can you just spell your last name for us?
F-I-N-U-L-S-T-E-I. Well, the residents, as you may have heard, are adamantly opposed to any master plan review that will allow automobile dealerships to become a permitted use anywhere in Manalapan. We believe that this change is incompatible with the neighborhood and will have an adverse impact on the proposed area, causing traffic issues, diminishing property values, and altering lifestyle. All of this has been discussed in great detail over the past few months. We are specifically opposed to the revision on the table tonight. It is fatally flawed. It is a negligent, inconsistent report in which Mr. Kramer recommends a totally new direction for Manalapan's development based on a borough law that does not exist. It borrows a traffic report from an applicant that will reconstruct and rezone an intersection to accommodate a mall that has not yet been introduced, and offers no report to Taylor's Mills Road, the intersection that will be most burdened by this change. Worse, a member of another board charged that Kramer's figures are wrong. Logic 101. If you start with a faulty premise, you cannot reach a correct conclusion. This master plan is wrong. The fast-track presentation backfired, brought the citizens out, and now we're trying to piece it together with duct tape and safety pins. Not only can you not pass this revision, you should not even vote on it. I don't even think you should pay for it. If it is approved, based on the current 3-acre standard, we could wind up with 28 dealerships on Route 9. Where would they go? Where would you put even 2 or 3? What access to which roads would they have? How many unenforceable, useless caveats would be required for the next generation of dealerships? What would be the point, since it is clear to anyone looking at the intersection that drivers will take the path of least resistance and make the right turn onto Taylor's Mills Road the same way they make the U-turns in the doctor's lot on the other side. As said, what if the current owner decides to get out of the business? It can be sold to anyone, a Chevy or a used car dealer. You ask us to trust you, but offer no guarantees for the future and are making the decisions in the dark about our lives. We see a poorly thought out, ineffective solution for a short-term problem that will only benefit a couple of businesses, with the byproduct being irreparable damage to the entire community. There is plenty of opportunity to attract business to town without the disruption of a master plan. We think Manalapan's problem has been incorrectly defined. It is not that our office and retail space is unrentable, but rather that our space seems to be not competitive with our neighbors. I have listened to our officials complain about lost opportunities since we started attending meetings. There are 28 vacant retail spaces in Manalapan, most in visible, well-trafficked centers. So what are we doing to rent them? We're listening to Tom Thomas, the freehold planner, give testimony about our town while he's regularly underbidding us in his. He inspires no confidence in us. Ms. Klein amplified the problems with the confusing lack of coordination in our community planning. We know the business who wanted to buy a warehouse on Route 33 and was turned down because only golf stores were allowed. H&R Block found offices in 2 other adjacent towns when we were too expensive. Why aren't the Township Committee, the Planning Board, the Zoning Commission, the Economic Development Commission, landlords, residents, all sitting together in one room, determining what incentives are needed to attract rentals away from other towns, fill up our empty spaces within the framework of our existing laws, instead of rewriting them to cater to predators who have no interest in our community? We have consistently brought over 300 people to these meetings. There are many hundreds using our websites every day who are willing participants in an effort to keep Manalapan a wonderful place to live. Please do not change the master plan. Thank you.
With respect to the last witness, there are a couple of misstatements of fact that should be corrected on the record. The witness stated that there is no firm requirement within the township as to the Route 33 overlay zone. There is a requirement, I will read it into the record, from the zoning code of the township for the Route 33 overlay zone. And it says that berms shall be provided as part of the landscape plan for the green zone. Such berms shall be arranged to screen the view of the site in Route 32. There is a requirement, that is the adopted ordinance of the township. The second statement was that I had miscalculated some numbers. I miscalculated numbers with respect to traffic generation. I calculated no numbers. I believe that the report that the witness is referring to are numbers that were in the report prepared by CME that was addressed at the last meeting, and there was a follow-up from CME as to the numbers and the correction.
Can I react to that, or am I done? Can I
You just
react?
made a statement correcting what you had. I mean, what do you have?
The statement, the
Well,
CME traffic.
Mr. Chair, if Mr. Kunkelstein is going to continue to participate, he needs to do it. Get the microphone. I just caution.
And just the one issue, sir?
Okay, I just. The CME report was done over a holiday weekend and is not relevant to the traffic there today. It was not the same cars that are on a daily basis. The numbers we took on an ad hoc Saturday morning count were considerably different, and we presented those in evidence here. So there is disparity between numbers taken over an abnormal day to numbers taken recently on a normal day.
Thank you. Did you sign in here?
Yeah.
Okay. With that.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state and spell your name for the record and list your address.
I sit in the unique position of having sat on this board for most of the last 13 years and sat through all of the testimony from last year. And I think I would like to say for the audience's purposes that everybody on the board takes this very seriously. Nobody came into this with any preconceived notions. The idea that this is somehow ran through or done deal is absolutely not true. And as of all of my informal conversations with anybody on the board, nobody had made a decision. So I just want you to know that everybody's taking this real seriously and nothing is first thing on the OP10 zone, I understand there's a potential. It's are some ordinance suggestions you could make that could mollify some of the problems, with berms and lights and sound requirements so that neighbors wouldn't be bothered. But I think the big issue that you have to really focus on, the one that I really don't know how to deal with, is the traffic on the weekend.
Yeah, let them think about it, and you can put it in time.
My recollection is the testimony was on the worst hour on a Saturday, you had 60 more cars in that 1 hour on top of what the CNX building would be if it was full. That's a lot of cars, and it's a really bad intersection as it is. I mean, I think if you were going to consider it, you would have to come up with perhaps making going westbound on Taylor Mills, you'd have to have some sort of right-hand turn lane, and that might alleviate the problem, but I don't even, I'm not a traffic expert, and I have my doubts as to whether or not that will help. I think the biggest issue, though, is sort of the planning issues. You're not just looking at this one dealership, with this one particular owner. You're looking potentially other areas, and contrary to what Jerry has to say, I think there is a decent possibility that 10, 15 years down the road, the Exxon and the Sovereign Bank, for example, could be vacant. We've seen a plethora of banks in the last 10 years. Maybe in the next 10 years, we could see them closing. And who knows? The cars will do won't need gas stations. So I can hear Jerry's speech now. Come on, give us a variance. It's an empty gas station. 2.9 acres, and it's almost 3 acres. Just let it happen.
I want to be here in 15 years.
So, I don't think you can assume that it's just going to be this one location. I think you have to assume that you're looking way down the road, and there's a good possibility that there's going to be more opportunities for car dealerships. I also think there's a serious question as to whether this particular area of Route 9 has a problem with tenants. I think we've heard that the building next door is full. We've heard that the building, from my understanding, the building across the street has decent tenancy. It may not be full, but it's occupied. And I think there's a serious question as to whether or not this is a creative problem, because Mr. King bought the building, and Jeffrey explained there was an attempt for a tenant who said they didn't want it. I'm sorry, they wanted it, but the building was already purchased. And I think there's you have to sort of think about why someone would purchase a building without development. And the only reason I could come up with is that they couldn't get an extension of their option. And why wouldn't you get an extension of your option? Well, because the seller has either a tenant or a buyer. So I think there's a serious question as to whether the whole basis for the need for this is there. Whether there truly is, at least in Route 9 in analysis. I'm not talking about Route 33, I'm not talking about Freehold, and I'm not talking about anywhere else in Monmouth County. But as to whether in this particular area there truly is no reasonable tenant. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. I hope you'll consider them, and I know all of you maybe will. Thanks.
Thank you for your 13 years in the board as chairman here. Jonathan Klein, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that the board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please state your name and election, and give us your address.
Jonathan Klein, K-O-N-A-T-H-A-N, Klein, K-L-E-I-N, 5 Manor Drive, Marlboro, New Jersey. They testified earlier. I was on the list and they testified earlier.
You put your name back on the new list.
So your concerns have already been addressed?
Yeah, well, we can just talk about, we also manage the building across the street, last testimony.
Okay, so you were with the first,
That's correct.
you have nothing else to add to that?
Nothing else after that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Sonowitz.
This should be interesting. Scary.
Thank you, and you're here. Although obviously don't agree with it, but basically you've heard for the last 3 months every argument 14 different times. Everybody spoke with regard to traffic, with regard to emissions, with regard to difficulties at the intersection and the like. And yet, from your planner's report and from your traffic engineer's report and from the reports that were presented, those are the facts. I understand fully that Greenfield Road does not want this change zone, because we do not want to have a car dealership in front of it. And notwithstanding that we have a 60,000-foot empty building, I know of no, and I can represent to you on a personal level, I know of no situation where the fact is that people want to move into this building. I guess they would if the price was right.
Mr. Sonowitz, you can't take your personal
Well,
representative knowledge, that's testimony, so if you have.
Right. Then basically, the fact is that when we talk about what existed was a CMX building that had 260, 70 employees, that had tremendous traffic coming in the morning, which really didn't affect too many people, I guess. And in the afternoon, they presented a picture of Taylor Mills Road as it was backed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with the school buses. And basically, Ray Katina heard their concerns. As a result of that, and recognizing that he wants to be there with his Audi agency, he also knew, as you do, and of course Mr. Finkelstein indicated 28 dealerships. Now, I guess I really don't have to respond to that, but of course, with a 3-acre minimum, or even if you made it a 4-acre minimum, there are probably only 2 sites in all of the OP3 zone that have access to Route 9, and so Mr. Finkelstein does know that most of the OP3 zones...
Mr. Sonowitz,
All right,
you can talk about what your client is representing, not about what Mr.
We're representing that in this zone, there would only be 2 areas. One would be the office building that is somewhat rented, that has a high vacancy rate in ours. Is Mr. Lazar correct that 15 years from now, I guess I won't be around to be there to do that. I hope I am heard. Thank you very much. Basically, the fact is anything can happen in the future, but quite frankly, that's why we have master plans.
Well, keep down, please.
We have master plans because they're there for a living zoning. Things change. We've had adoptive reuses in many buildings in many municipalities. Things go in, things go out. But the fact is, we want a vibrant Route 9. Businesses want to be on Route 9. That is our economic corridor. There is an entire township that has to be serviced by this board and by the township committee. We have a local neighborhood that is opposed to it, and we understand that. And notwithstanding that we don't believe that there is, or would have been with a full-service dealership, a problem with emissions, a problem with traffic, and it was all presented. We know they don't want it. We know that through an ordinance, there won't be any lighting, there won't be any noise, there'll be plenty of buffers, and that's an ordinance situation, not a policy statement. In this particular case, as we stated at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, we would have, and again, recognizing that, if in fact you find that some of the residents' concerns meant something to you in terms of what should or shouldn't be in this area, notwithstanding that there are so many of them only a mile away, and that Wegmans and the rest of these shopping centers would make this look small time, if you made this just into a showroom and did not, and again, it's still the ordinance from the township committee, not the planning board, but if the planning board would say, well, showrooms only, no service, no car carriers, no car washes, and the like, you would have possibly 1/3 the traffic of an office building. Now,
Mr. Sonowitz, you're not a traffic expert, so...
well, but the board can take it down, you can ask your own engineer, you can ask your own planner. The fact of the matter is that if there is, and you all heard the testimony with regard to how many cars before would come in with service, how many cars would come in on all different times of the day. The fact of the matter is that this would be a blessing to the people who complain about traffic, and each person... And it doesn't matter what people say, it doesn't matter how upset they get, but the fact of the matter is that it would really, and you know this, there would be almost no traffic there relative to speaking to what would be permitted with the building that exists. And that's a fact. It's not a matter of conjecture, it's a fact. If you're not gonna have service, if you're not gonna have car washes, you don't have emissions, you don't have noise, you don't have lighting, you don't have car carriers coming in, they go to a service center. And I would point out to you that the Asbury Park Press, on just this past week, on February 21st, they had a whole article about the State Planning Commission, public hearings, land use plan shift, and emphasis to economic growth.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, that's a proposed plan that hasn't been adopted.
No, I'm saying, they're talking about, I'm not suggesting there's a plan, but everybody is talking about.
Sir, I see attorney cut you off, you're on.
Okay. I'm not suggesting it's a plan, I'm talking about the fact that having
Well, I know what you're suggesting that we consider the economics here.
Yes.
That's what we're talking.
Yes.
I've already advised the board that.
Finish up already. Then the same courtesy was extended to you, please.
I've already advised the board that the economics of the situation doesn't make, what it is as a rateable doesn't make it any more or less suitable for the site. And if at some point this new state plan is adopted and it shifts what we can discuss, that's fine, but that's not our state plan right now. It's not the state of our law right now. It's some thinking, that people are talking about.
In conclusion, and there's no point in going any further, we know what the testimony is. We've heard the testimony for these last 3 or 4 months. If this board would be way clear to putting what is obviously a use that would not in any way adversely affect the residents of Manalapan and would add to the vibrancy of Route 9 in a situation where there are 600,000 feet and more of office space that could be built, hundreds of thousands of square feet in the general western Monmouth area that are not rented. It's time to look, and that's why we have a master plan, and we look at the new conditions, and we want to make these buildings viable. And as you heard from Ms. Klein, and as you would have heard last week from Mr. Baha, the fact
Actually,
that
Mr. Stonewood, you can't state what someone who didn't testify was going to say.
that would be hearsay. And so,
Hearsay, that's what the points.
right. In any event, the bottom line is, this is a good use, it fits the property, it would be good for the municipality, and if it were just a showroom only, it would serve the residents better than any existing use. Thank you.
Oh, come on. Okay, that closes the public portion, now turn to the board. Professionals, do you have anything to add before
Mr. Chair, I could just kind of give some direction for this portion of the process. So you've now heard from your professionals, and you may hear a little bit more based upon what they've heard tonight. You've heard from interested parties, members of the public, representatives of other building owners, representatives of the entity that has requested the modification of the master plan. So now it's deliberation time. You can ask us questions, you can debate issues amongst yourselves. When it comes time to vote, you have a few different options. You could vote to approve this in its totality, as it is currently written, or you could vote to reject it in its totality, as it's currently written, or you can vote to approve portions of it and ask Mr. Kramer excuse me, to make modifications. So, for instance, if you found that recreational uses is not a use that you prefer to see on Route 33, you'd say, we'd like to approve everything else except for the recreational uses. And what would happen then is Mr. Kramer would go back and modify the plan to what the board wanted. We would come back in 2 weeks, the board would see if that's the plan that they directed into draft, and we could vote on that.
Do you have anything to add, Rich, before we go?
I have no other comments.
No, just anybody has a question. Okay, folks, we ask that you keep quiet. As we close the public, we now need to discuss this amongst ourselves. Anybody on the board wishing to make a statement, a question?
I've listened to literally scores of residents voice their opposition to change the master plan to allow car dealerships to operate in Manalapan. However, I've only heard a few people come forward to support the change to the master plan. I'm sure there are residents that are disinterested or unaware of the vote that we're began 5 or 6 years ago is playing such a large part in the planning of some of our leaders. We have seen the economy decline before, and we've seen the economy rebound as well. Changing the master plan to accommodate an increase in rateables is the knee-jerk reaction to the tax problem that every municipality faces. Make no mistake about it, chasing rateables has been folly for many towns. As one resident pointed out, Freehold pays nearly the same rate of taxation than Alvin, and look at all the rateables they have. Making those who live in the Route 9 corridor bear the burden of these changes, so that the other residents in Alvin won't face a tax increase is unfair and insensitive. I'm hopeful this board chooses not to amend the master plan. This will send a strong message to those who see Manalapan only as a marketplace, not as a community. That regardless of the economic climate, we can't be bought. Manalapan did not get their business, but the planning board members who came before us represent